Time to fight fear with faith. Jody Paar is a survivor who is no longer staying silent. She and her guest will fuel you up so you too can fight fear, uplifting and inspirational stories that will rock you to your core. We don't tiptoe around the truth, we steamroll it in a bold way. This is your life, and now is the time to start living it. Get ready for the Faith Over Fear podcast with Jody Paar. Now, welcome Jody Paar to inspire you.
Welcome back to Faith Over Fear. I am so glad you guys are back, either listening or watching today. I have a super special guest. I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story. It is simply amazing. It's so amazing that we've already done this whole run one time, and it got completely deleted off my computer, and so we had to set it up to do it again. So that tells you how powerful it is. So if something's saying, listen to it later, or maybe you don't want to hear it right now, I'm telling you, plug in and listen, because this is a powerful story, and I believe with everything inside of me that somebody needs to hear it. So I want to welcome Laura Mitchell. Thank you so much for being here, girl. I appreciate you, and I'm just going to give you the floor to let us know where did the fear start? How did it start for you?
Hi, Jody. So Laura Mitchell here, everyone, and thank you again, Jody. It's true that there is a message in this for somebody, because we've been so challenged to get this message out to y'all. Yes. Well, I come from a place of shame and fear, and just was told when I was very, very young that I wasn't good enough. In fact, it was a story that's in my book, which I'm going to plug.
Yes, best-selling authors. Yes.
And Jody and I have a great story, but I'm going to dip into that really quick. But we met at a conference where, I personally just wanted to learn how to reach more people quicker, because I'm a psychologist by trade and I work in marriage and family therapy. So I went to this conference and I really wanted to learn how to reach more people quicker. And I end up telling my story out of nowhere, something that I had never shared with another human being in 25 years. And I shared my story of just having given birth to my daughter when I was 22 years old in the Department of Corrections while I was shackled to a bed. And it was overwhelming, because I had never spoke those words in front of people, because I had lived my life with just shame and guilt for what I had been through. Now, I had tried to make things better along the way, but it wasn't until that very weekend that I was released from all of the shame that I had been through, just because of a series of things that had happened in my life that I was told that I wasn't good enough. And, part of that shame and guilt come from a place where I was 17 years old, and it's a great story. It's in my book. I'm going to keep pushing that, but it's in my book. I ran for Miss Colorado. Jody, I don't think I shared this part with you, but I ran for Miss Colorado, and I actually won a role on a soap opera in Los Angeles, California. So I moved to California when I was 17 years old. I was able to graduate from high school early, but when I got to California and I was ready to start this new venture in my life, I found out that I was pregnant. And it was a time where I was afraid. I was devastated, because I thought I was moving forward I was told that I wasn't good enough when I was very, very young. But then I was finally good enough, because people thought that, I could do this. And I got there, I find out I'm pregnant. And I carried my son for 9 months, and he had a congenital heart disease, and he was here in this world for 12 minutes. So he was born, and he died on the day he was born. And so I was very young, and I didn't understand what happened, and I thought I wasn't good enough to be his mom. And I continued to think that I wasn't good enough. And our family just kind of, shaded that time in my life, and I never was able to grieve or to heal from that. So I lived with guilt and shame, thinking that I really wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough to succeed at what I had, people had wanted me to do, and what I had won this competition to move on to California. And then I get there, and I wasn't good enough. And then I wasn't good enough to be a mother. And so that just sent me into a whirlwind in my lifetime. And, I fell into a group of just the wrong people, wrong place, wrong time.
Which happened.
Everything played into, my story. And I actually found myself in prison when I was 22 years old. And I was getting ready to give birth to my daughter. and I was afraid, and I was alone, and I was embarrassed, and I was ashamed, because I was now at the pit of shame and guilt. And here I was again getting ready to lose yet another child because of my choices. But it really wasn't because of my choices. It's because I didn't know any better. I didn't have anybody that cared for me, or that could help me grieve or show me compassion. And at this moment in my life, when I was ready to give birth to a child in prison, I had met a sheriff that worked at the corrections. She was one of the officers there, corrections officer, and she would come and see me every single day, and she would say, "You're going to be okay, and you can do this, and you've got this." And I had never been encouraged like that in my life, and she showed me compassion. She continued to show me compassion. And the day that my child was born, I didn't know it was a girl yet, but I just gave it away. My daughter was born. I was walking into the hospital, and as I was walking, I was shackled. My arms and my legs were shackled, and I was I was having contractions, and we would stop, and I would have a contraction, and she'd say, "We got this, we can do this." And I was afraid, and I was alone. And we got into that hospital room, and I just remember that it smelled like bleach. It was a very old and tattered building. And that's the memory that I have of it, is just being, I lay down on a bed, and I was still shackled, and I was having contractions, and the doctor and the nurse came in, and, they didn't even look me in the eye, because I was just a number. I was a convicted felon. I wasn't a single mother giving birth to a child in a penitentiary. I was just a number to them. And I remember they didn't even look me in the eye, and I'm having contractions. And I remember the security guard, her name is Sheila Haynes. She said, "I'm going to unshackle her legs because she's having a hard time." And the doctor said, "No, that's out of protocol, and we can't have it." And she said, "For God's sake, have some compassion." And so she unshackled my legs from the bed. And it was at that moment that I gave birth to my beautiful baby girl. And it was at that moment that I realized that it was because of this woman who showed me compassion that allowed me to be able to, move forward in life. And, I was so afraid, because my daughter was leaving me. I was losing yet another child. That's a beautiful story, because my parents actually were able to come and take her and have her, so I knew that she was okay. But 20 minutes later, after giving birth to a child, I was put into a cell with a Kotex pad and an empty womb.
Wow.
And I was, I was upset. I was screaming. I was crying. And so they put me on a 3-day mandatory suicide watch. But I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. For the very, very first time in my life, I wanted to live. And I knew that I had a purpose. I knew that God allowed me to have, my children. And I had 2 sons prior to my daughter, but I couldn't receive them because I didn't grieve the death of my first son. And when my sons were born, I said, "Are they healthy? Are they alive? Are they going to live? Great." And then I went back into that whirlwind of destruction, because I still felt like I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, because when we go through hard times, and we go through that whole shame and guilt, and we attract what we don't heal from. So of course we attract all the same people into our circle, and it's just a lot of brokenness there.
Yes.
So when you lost your son that was only there for 12 minutes, then when your daughter was born, it's like something was alive in you again.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And so again, I wanted to live. And so I did just that. I got out of there. And you'll have to hear the story. You can read it in my book, but I'll give you a little hint. I actually took the fall for somebody that I was involved with, and that's how I ended up inside of the Department of Corrections. But, it didn't matter that I didn't do the crime that I was in there for. There were other things that I had been, self-convicted for, that I knew that I had to find healing. And it was the only place, God had to take me out of the world and put me inside of, another world, so that my daughter could be born, healthy, and that I could heal. and really become unshackled from what I had been living with for so many years. So I got out of there, and I still continue to live with guilt and shame, but it was different because this time my shame, I turned that into power. I was so afraid to apply for jobs because I had a convicted felon, on my record, and I didn't want anybody to know. So I knew that I was resourceful. I knew that I was creative. I knew that I wasn't who I used to be. And so I became my own boss. I started a nonprofit community center where I helped single women and single families. Yes, outside, families that were just individuals that were coming out of prison, revisit and reconnect with their families. And I helped with grandparents that were raising their grandchildren in childcare. And so I did that for about 18 years. And now my middle son now runs that organization in Denver, Colorado.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, so I got out and I was on a mission. I mean, it was all God. It was all God. I gave all the glory to God because He's the one that gave me the strength. He's the one that, for such a long time I was so angry at God, and I realized, you know what, He can take it. And He knows where I'm going. I had no idea, but He knew. So I got out. I went back to college, and I graduated with a degree in business and a master's in psychology and marriage and family counseling. So, I just used what the enemy was trying to use against me. I used it for God's glory. And, today that's how my story started. I started telling my story on that stage, and then it just blew up from there. So it's been a crazy 2 years. But at that conference 2 years ago, I think it's a little less than 2 years, but I have written my book, and from my book, I'm now on to speaking platforms all over the country now, and I am getting ready to, let's see, where do I start? I have a TED Talk coming up in March, and I just met with the producers of the Ellen DeGeneres show. They want to hear a story, something that happened in the book. That is also a story of victory. It's not the story of my daughter, but yet another story, because it's like it hasn't stopped for me. I've continued to grow through trials and tribulations, as we should.
Right.
As we should.
Right.
And then I will be speaking I'm opening for Les Brown in New York City on April 29th. Wow. And then I'll be again in New York City, I'm sorry, not New York City, Miami, Florida on May 16th, another large event. And so my career has just launched. It's been so crazy, and I'm so honored, and I'm so blessed to have had an opportunity to tell my story. So now today, Jody, not only am I doing that, but what I'm doing is that I am helping women, because that's my niche, is helping women to heal from their past. So we're developing just this wonderful program, which now is part of what I launched about a year ago, which is Legacy Therapy Publishing. So I'm helping women publish their stories and using their past, bringing it into their present, helping them find their purpose, and also making a profit from that. Just like, all of the beautiful things that are happening to me.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And God is so good. And when we met, we're sitting right beside each other, and it tells you how God aligns the perfect people together, because I just felt open to tell you my story. And I hadn't even been telling my story for that long, maybe 6 months or something like that. And when I told you, you said, I have a story too. And then you told me yours. And I have watched you just become this beautiful butterfly, because you were very, I don't want to say shy, but I think that you weren't ready to tell your story until that moment. And I understand that so much. It's all about God's timing. And that's where I don't want people to get frustrated or upset, or just know that when God's timing is ready for you, He will start opening the doors. He will start moving. He will start making things happen. And so just from that moment on, you have just become a beautiful butterfly with your message and your story and helping other people. And if someone was listening and they're in the fear part, and they're at the part where, let's say, they don't feel like they're a good mother, or they don't feel like they're a good father, and they don't feel like they're even useless on this earth, what would your message to them be?
If you've been through something and you've overcome that, share it, get it out there, talk about it, because somebody else somewhere in this world is going through that.
That's
And if
right.
you can help somebody not go through that by sharing your experiences, why wouldn't you? I mean, everybody has a story. Everybody has something to share. Everybody has someone to save. And we may not even realize it, because I didn't tell my story for 25 years. And here I am now, I've opened up and I've heard stories from women who have taken care of, their grandchild because their daughter is in prison. I have heard stories of families coming back together because of the support that my family gave to me. I've heard stories of women getting new jobs because I've been able to encourage them and say, don't let anything hold you back. I created my own job so that I didn't have to have anyone judge me. And now the funny thing is about October 2019, I was actually asked by the Department of Corrections in California to come in, and I was a keynote speaker where they paid me lots of money to come across on the other side and talk to their sheriffs, their administration department, about having compassion with the inmates that they work with. And so God just whipped that around. I thought my niche was speaking to women in prison, but it went larger than that. It went greater than women in prison. It went to the people who are, the ones that can show compassion and educate, inmates, and, keep that recidivism down by showing compassion and being loving. So, he used my little story of, being in a jail cell and having someone listen, to having thousands of sheriffs listen to thousands of, inmates that may be going through something. So everybody has a story, and you never know who you can reach and who you can help by just sharing something. And when you get that out of you, the healing begins.
And it's so beautiful because there's so many people that are in prisons today or jails today that they never had any kind of teaching. They've never had love. They've never had compassion. They've never had anybody care about them. So thank you that you're doing this work and that you're helping all of these people and changing their lives and impacting their lives, because that is huge. Because it is so sad that so many people think they're just almost not even seen. And that's why I always make sure that I talk about isolation, because that is one thing that the enemy wants to use, is to say, nobody else has been where you are. Nobody else was shackled to a bed. Nobody else, went through this. And so it allows us to get our stories out there to say, you're not alone. And I'm going to stand in my truth, because that is what God wants me to do. So thank you for that.
Yes. And it's so much bigger than that, Jody. I mean, just from, I've been over at Cedar Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, where I've talked to a group of doctors about the trauma that I went through when my son was, only here for 12 minutes. We didn't know at the time about congenital heart disease. There was no testing.
Wow.
There was nothing like that back in, it was 1987. And yes, I know, 1987.
You look fabulous for your age. That's what you're thinking. Yes, she does.
But so it's really allowed me to go into different stages and different arenas in life, different genres, so I can talk to doctors about, trauma with congenital heart disease, and how parents, a loss of a child, and that disease, and speak to doctors and speak to prisons. And then my story just continues. There's many layers, of what happened. And so, but all of those layers have, played into where I'm at in my life today. And it's not being, it's not being afraid to talk about feeling guilty or talk about not knowing how to grieve, because I know how to do that now openly, so that no one else has to go through something that I may have went through.
Right.
So it's been exciting. It's been very scary. I'm still, growing every day. I think that, what I want to really put out to people is that do not stop investing in yourself. You are worth it. Every single, opportunity that I get, I'm reading something, I'm looking at something. I just hired a new coach. I just joined a new mastermind. So as I'm teaching, I'm also still growing, because I have so much more to learn and so much more to give.
Yeah, that's such a great point too. Investing in yourself is so important. And
Yes.
we talk about that all the time, because you don't want to try to do life alone. There's so many people to help you and to uplift you, and even with your publishing. So if you have a story that you really want to get out there, but you start to write and you get this block, and it's like you can't continue writing because of the healing that needs to be there. She's also a therapist. So that's what's so nice about that, is that she can help you, and that she offers this, which a lot of publishers don't offer, that side of things, so to help them get their story out when they kind of get to that block, right?
Yes. That's the whole purpose of the legacy therapy publishing. So I just took a twist on traditional publishing and realized exactly that when you're telling your story, you know, you're still going through that timeline again, and it's an opportunity for you to find that healing, to understand, to really, you know, grieve through that process, whether it be good, bad, ugly, beautiful. There's still a process. I mean, people don't realize that, you know, the process of grieving is so important in life. When you lose your cell phone, it's a grieving process, right? You're all of a sudden it's gone. You feel abandoned. And then it's, you know, you go through that process of, you know, you're angry. Oh, darn it, I just had it. What did I do with it? I know I had it. And then you start bargaining. Well, I didn't really need a new cell phone anyway. You know, I mean, grieving should happen in everyday life.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're writing a book, you discover that, you know, you discover all of these little nuances that can help heal you.
Yeah.
So that's what we do at Legacy Therapy is publishing, is we just help you tell your story and get you to that part of healing where you're comfortable to talk about where you've been, to share, you know, your experiences so that somebody else can be healed. And, you know, maybe, who knows, be on a stage with Les Brown someday in New York City with 2,200 people. You never know what God has planned for you, but unless you know, are willing to take that leap of faith, you know, you'll never know if you don't do it.
That's exactly.
I'm proof of that.
Yes, you are. You're a walking, talking testimony of it. Absolutely.
We are.
We are. Yes. Absolutely. Laura, let everybody know how they can follow you, how they can find you. If they want to write a book, let them know how they can find you on social media.
Okay. You can find me at IamLauraMitchell.com. You can find me at I Am Laura Mitchell here. And you can find me at Legacy Therapy Books. And it's actually LegacyTherapyBookPublishing.com. That's new for me. But I'm just growing and getting busy. And now I all of a sudden have a team. Fantastic.
How does that feel to have a team? I'll be so happy.
It feels wonderful. It's actually, you know, it's been a work in progress to just grow so quickly. But, you know, I had to get a publicist last week for the Ellen show, just to help me develop my message a little clearer. I want to be able to, you know, I have a short timeline on Ellen, anywhere from 2 to 12 minutes. So I want to be able to do that. Again, it's investing in myself.
That is so huge. Did you ever think you'd be on Ellen?
Never.
See, guys, this is why you tell your story.
I know.
You never know what doors that God's going to open, and everything that you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. Everything. Yes. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. My name is Jody Paar. You can find me online, Jody, Jodypaa, Paar. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And guys, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with episode 20. I cannot believe we're already on episode 20, but episode 20, I'm super excited about that. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks. Bye.